Other side of our studio with Media Watch, Emma James. Good evening to you.
Hi there.
Now, looking at the coverage online of the growing unrest in Nicaragua, and I imagine this makes us some seriously distressing reading.
Yes, it really does. The roots of this crisis, it's been brewing since April when protests began. Now hundreds of people are dead, the vast majority of them civilians. The Economist among those reporting on developments in Nicaragua with the headline, Daniel Ortega, the president, is causing a bloodbath. Could Nicaragua go the way of Venezuela, they ask. Now it's illustrated with this drawing of Daniel Ortega in a bloodbath, but you'll notice that the shadow on the wall is very definitely that of Nicolas Maduro. And what they say in this article is that although the situation in Nicaragua is very much a full-blown civil insurrection with mass casualties, although it bears many similarities to what's happened in Venezuela, it's getting far less attention. And it's something that a lot of people are questioning. Why is it being ignored in so many places? This person taking to Twitter to say, now that the World Cup is over, can we focus our attention on Nicaragua? Children are being murdered and tortured by the leftist government. The international community needs to stop it. More than 300 students are dead. Now, the Washington Post had a reporter, Joshua Partlow, who was actually inside a church that was barricaded, surrounded by paramilitaries and police at the weekend, along with hundreds of students, between 100 and 200 students. They had actually been seeking refuge. They were student protesters seeking refuge, some of them looking for a safe place to triage their wounds because, of course, the protests are being put down in a very violent manner. This piece is a first-hand account, a very vivid portrayal of the fear, the defiance, and the injuries as well being suffered by some of these young people, including a young medic who was actually tending to people, and it was her who was shot in the leg that you can see in that image there. This video as well really brings home the terror of what's happening in that particular university. This taken a few days ago. A young girl screaming, "Mummy, forgive me, I'm doing this for my country." You can hear the guns going off in the background. This young boy as well talking about the fact that he is prepared to die for his beliefs. Now, if you look in certain quarters, like Telesur, for example, you'd be forgiven for thinking this was an alternate universe, frankly, because they talk here about the fact that tomorrow, the 19th of July, Daniel Ortega will be celebrating the defeat of the not-so-soft coup. It's the anniversary of the date where Ortega actually overthrew his dictatorial predecessor, someone that many people feel he now bears more than a passing resemblance to. And if you look at this government news site as well, El 19, they actually talk about these students being terrorists and criminals. A very, very different story being told online, though. If you look at the hashtags, I scream for Nicaragua or Nicaragua wants peace, the brutal way in which these protesters are being treated, it really is deeply shocking. This image shows a young doctor, a young woman, who had been stamped on. You can see on the right-hand side a jack-booted paramilitary stamping on her head. Now, that is somebody who was trying to treat those wounded in the protests. This image, too, shows the kind of bullets that have been left behind by those paramilitaries and police. And interestingly, tonight, the Organization of American States has actually condemned this violence and repression, passing a resolution. Many, though, talking online about the fact that Daniel Ortega is not going to pay any attention at all to a resolution. In fact, he will wipe his backside on it.
Strong words. And I'm glad that we at France 24 are actually now just throwing some light on the situation in Nicaragua, because it is, as you say, very distressing. Let's move on, though. Donald Trump's declarations on Russian meddling continue to dominate conversations online, and we have a fresh angle to this controversy.
Yes, dominate and confound, I think it's probably fair to say, because hot on the heels of the would not gate comes another denial of sorts. Asked if Russia is still targeting the US, Trump says no, contradicting election warnings from his own intelligence chief. Now, that was a little earlier this evening. The reaction here is from the former NSA and CIA Director General Michael Hayden. OMG, oh my God, repeated over and over to the news that Donald Trump had come out with this. Now, this is a reminder of what Dan Coates had said. He's the current director of the National Intelligence for the US, he has said that the warning signs are there, the system is blinking, the digital infrastructure of the US is literally under attack. Now, that's what he had to say on Friday. Chuck Schumer, the Democrat senator, has come out with this. Mr. President walked this back too, after, of course, he went back on his previous comments about Russia. Funnily enough, Donald Trump has kind of walked back on it. Not him himself, but Sarah Huckabee Sanders, White House press secretary, saying he wasn't saying no to the question. He was just saying no, he wouldn't answer any further questions. Doesn't really fit with the videos that we see where he then goes on to answer lots of other questions from other reporters. So once again, we're left a little bit dazed and confused as to what exactly the real story is here. Now, of course, just yesterday, he declared that he had misspoken when saying he couldn't see why it would be Russia who would interfere in the US elections. He then said he meant he couldn't see why it would not be Russia. So people have been coming up with Trump movie quotes. It's the hashtag of the day, where people are changing the meaning of very famous quotes from films or just making up their own. We won't need a bigger boat. This is a beautiful boat. Believe me, it's going to last forever. And of course, that is from Jaws. Not the words, obviously, but they're just putting Trump's words into Jaws's mouth, if you like. Toto, I've got a feeling we are still in Kansas. This is completely normal for Kansas. Do not doubt me. No further questions. Houston, there's no problem. Nothing has been better. It's fake news. Of course, fake news has to come in there. And this is one of my favourites. Luke, I misspoke yesterday. I meant to say I am not your father. So yes, lots of people having a lot of fun on this one. This one, not a movie quote, but certainly worth a mention. Ask what your country can do for you, but not what you can do for your country.
That one is a very poignant one to end on. And I'm not misspeaking when I say, Emma, thank you very much indeed. Emma James of Media Watch.